welcome to Themis Podcasts. Themis is a risk management firm specialising in financial crime. Our aim of these podcasts is to bring you interesting news, interviews and recordings of our exclusive events from the world of financial crime. Survival Financial Inclusion. This podcast is brought to you as part of a key industry-wide research project, commissioned by the UK Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner and in partnership with Tribe Freedom Foundation. It is one of a series that we will be releasing that addresses modern slavery and human trafficking and the financial sector. In this episode, we talk with representatives from HSBC, Barclays, Snowdrop, Kalayaan and Migrant Help UK about access to bank accounts for survivors of modern slavery in the UK and what the financial services sector should be doing as a whole to help support victims.
Hello everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us today. This focus group, as you know, forms part of a 12-month research project that we're working on, commissioned by Dame Sarah Thornton, UK Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner, and jointly led by Tribe Freedom Foundation and Themis Financial Crime Agency. The report, A Call to Action for the Financial Sector, is working to improve understanding of how the financial sector can help to mitigate the risks of modern slavery and human trafficking. And also we're aiming to bring together practical steps that financial institutions can take to help tackle modern slavery. So in this session in particular, we're looking at the role of survivor financial inclusion initiatives in the prevention of modern slavery. And our goal for the focus group is to help facilitate discussion between kind of key industry leaders, further inform our research, and as I said, help engage the most relevant actors in our work to provide examples of best practice and set an example for the wider financial industry. So before we kick off with some of our key questions for discussion, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We've got Lara, Kat, Lou, Avril and Sam, and I will invite you all to give us a brief introduction on who you are, what you do, who you're working for, and how you're involved in helping to promote survivor financial inclusion. So if I just work my way around the virtual room, Catherine, I've got you up first. If you could give us a little intro.
Hi everybody, my name's Catherine Townsend and I work in Barclays. I work in the central Barclays UK customer vulnerability strategy team, and I've been working with our partners in fin crime and on the frontline leadership to help promote awareness of human trafficking, modern slavery, and what we're doing to help survivors get access to banking as part of our financial inclusion and customer vulnerability programme.
Thanks, Catherine. And Sam, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Sam Lakesmith. I work at a charity called Migrant Help, which is based in Dover in Kent. I'm the Regional Operations Manager for Modern Slavery and VPRS. So I manage a team of advisors who are based in the Dover head office, but also in our office in Stratford, and also we're recently setting up in Oxford. And we are a subcontractor for the Salvation Army to provide advice, guidance, support to potential victims of trafficking and modern slavery who have entered into the National Referral Mechanism. And part of our work is, with regards to ensuring that they can resettle, feel empowered, have autonomy over their finances. So we have been liaising quite a lot now with HSBC with regards to assisting survivors to set up bank accounts and liaising with the Salvation Army via a letter, and we've had some really successful results from that so far.
Thanks, Sam. And Lara, if you want to go next.
Hi everyone, I'm Lara Bundock. I'm the CEO of the Snowdrop Project. We are a charity based up in South Yorkshire. We operate providing holistic long-term support for reintegration of survivors of trafficking. We work outside of the NRM, so our referrals usually come from NRM providers for people who are about to exit and need ongoing support in order to reintegrate into the community and set up lives going forwards. So a big part of what we do, particularly within casework, is looking at that long-term sustainability in terms of finances, and part of that includes looking at setting up bank accounts for people.
Thanks, Lara. And Lou, if you want to go next.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Lou Walker. I'm a vulnerability, financial inclusion and vulnerability manager. Sorry, just getting my head around that. I'm new to the role. I've been doing it permanently for 3 months now, but I've been doing this role for the last 14 months on secondment. I have helped set up and promote the survivor bank service that we offer within HSBC, working with Migrant Help, the Salvation Army, Kalayaan and Snowdrop too, all to be able to offer their clients bank accounts.
Thank you, Lou. And Avril, last but not least.
Hi everyone, my name's Avril Sharp. I work for a small charity based in West London called Kalayaan. We provide advice, advocacy and support to those who enter the UK on a overseas domestic worker visa, or who understood that they were coming to the UK to work as a domestic worker. Some of those who contact us for support, we identify as having been exploited in domestic servitude and forced labour. So in our role as a first responder to the NRM, and with the survivor's consent, we will refer them to the NRM and then help them navigate that process. Similar to the other NGOs on the call, we provide long-term holistic support, and as part of that, we have accompanied many of our clients down the high street without success to try and open bank accounts. So I think it was, Lou, you might need to confirm this for me, but maybe in 2018 is when Kalayaan was first introduced to HSBC and Lou and her team at Bishopsgate in central London, and we are really pleased to have been able to accompany a number of those workers or survivors that we have supported to be able to successfully open bank accounts.
Thank you so much, Avril. And I think for the benefit of our listeners, we'd like to share a quick overview of just the scale of modern slavery in the UK and some of the challenges which survivors face when working to rebuild their lives following exploitation, and exactly what it is we mean when we talk about survivor financial inclusion. So Avril, maybe you'd like to just kind of kick us off there with a bit of information from your side to kind of highlight that for listeners who are not so aware of the challenges.
Of course. So beginning maybe with the scale, government statistics from 2019 show that there were 10,627 potential victims of slavery identified in 2019. I've taken that figure from end of year statistics for victims who provided their consent and entered into the National Referral Mechanism, which is the UK's framework for identifying and providing support to survivors. The actual number is likely to be significantly higher because many victims are unable or reluctant to report to authorities, or may not be successfully recognised even if they did. The latest estimates that I've found have come from the Global Slavery Index in 2018 that says that there are 136,000 people living in modern slavery in the UK. Now, many of these survivors are excluded from financial services due to barriers they face in opening a bank account. They often get turned away due to a lack of documentation, which has been confiscated by those who have been exploiting them. For many survivors, they only have a piece of paper which is issued to them by the Home Office, which says that their case is being considered under the NRM. Other barriers include not being able to provide proof of address because they have no bills in their name, and in some cases can't disclose their address if they're in temporary accommodation, maybe sofa surfing amongst friends, or in some cases accommodated in a safe house as well. So that's just a kind of brief overview.
Thanks, thank you, Avril. And yeah, I mean, it's clear that the scale of modern slavery across the UK is huge and also widely underestimated. That's actually something that we've found in some of our research that we've been doing, polling financial industry employees, is just how much that the number of people that are in modern slavery is underestimated. So it's great to kind of highlight that. And thank you for kind of giving us a little introduction there. And I think, Sam, if you could give us an insight into your experience working with survivors and how you think financial inclusion can help survivors to regain independence, and the kind of importance of it there.
Yeah, of course. I think I'd probably like to start with a little case study, actually. It was one I thought of yesterday. I think I did one of the first appointments at HSBC, which was down in Dover, with one of our clients. And I went there sort of thinking it would take an hour or so, you know, sort of blotted that out in my diary, thinking it might take some time to get things sorted. We went there, and actually the appointment took about 20 minutes in total, which I thought was fantastic, obviously for the client and obviously for us as well, to kind of know in terms of capacity how much we need, in terms of how much time it takes. Also, they gave the client a little welcome bag as well to HSBC, which I thought was really nice. And, you know, offered to that client that if they needed any further support with the account once it was opened, once they'd received the card and the PIN number, that they would be happy, you know, for that person to just drop in as and when. And I think for me, the moment that I realised how important this was to survivors was when the card actually arrived, and he actually said to me, "Oh, is this for me? Do I keep this?" And I thought, oh my goodness, you know, that like the privileges that we have, where we have our own accounts and we just use them completely independently and autonomously and don't have to provide them to anyone else. It's our money, we do what we like with it. So I think that was my sort of first main experience of using the Survivor bank account with HSBC, and why I've really pushed it for the advisors that I support and manage in the team to make sure that that is offered to other victims within sort of safe house provision or within outreach as well. I know that the number of branches is increasing in terms of who has had the training with the staff to be able to actually sort of open those accounts. So I think just from an empowerment point of view, and to kind of feel almost an identity back as well, you know, this is my card, this belongs to me, and this is my money, and I can access it, you know, whenever I want and however I want to. I think it's so important to have that kind of future for them, and to hopefully prevent re-exploitation as well if they kind of learn about their finances and how to budget.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so powerful to hear how that case study, how, you know, just the act of being given a card is such a monumental occasion, when for other people it would seem like such a kind of everyday occurrence. So yeah, really helpful to see that. And Lara, I would be great to hear from you as well, just briefly on your understanding of the importance of financial inclusion for survivors and the role that it can play in their long-term recovery.
I don't know if there's actually much I can add to what they've both said, but exactly as Sam's basically explained, the importance of having a bank account means that people have, it sounds really simple, have a place to put their money. So one of the issues that we see long term, because we do have people who come to us after the NRM who haven't been able to set up a bank account. That's often if they've been asylum seekers or things that had those kind of experiences during the NRM, and difficulties that we previously found were they got caught in a catch-22, particularly if they were setting up new benefits, and the benefits wouldn't be given to them unless they had a bank account, but the bank account couldn't be opened unless they already had the benefits starting. And so they get caught in, as I explained, a catch-22 where they can't receive the money even though they're entitled to the money, which then means people become very vulnerable to being targeted by further exploitation or loan sharks, or just simply taking advantage of people. And if they don't have somewhere to put the money, again, they may have some cash from different circumstances. Again, we've found that people start doing cash in hand jobs, but then that becomes risky of just having that cash in their house. And again, it makes them vulnerable to people saying, oh, I'll help you with this, or you can pay for this, rather than actually having it in a secure location. And so being able to access that very easily without barriers is really important, and reducing the length of time that it takes for people to be actually able to set that up as well reduces the chance that people are going to be retargeted for exploitation.
Avril, I saw there was something you'd like to add there.
Yeah, just to build on what Sam and Lara have already said, but I remember one of my very first survivors that I accompanied to Bishopsgate actually had been awarded compensation as a result of his trafficking experiences, and for a long time he wasn't able to access that because he didn't have a bank account. So money that was rightfully his, which was designed to try to help him rebuild his life, he wasn't able to access until we were made aware that HSBC had this scheme. So just another thing that I wanted to flag as well, why it's so important for survivors to be able to access financial services.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that kind of leads us on really nicely to look at the work that you're doing, Lou, and to hear a bit of an overview of the way that you've set up the HSBC Survivor Bank Account and how you are supporting survivors to access financial services in the UK.
Okay, thank you. Thank you guys for all that pre-introduction. So I guess ultimately we are providing basic bank accounts to survivors. And along with that, as Sam mentioned and as Avril mentioned as well, we do also provide some banking support. So the way that we provide the account is by using a letter. The individuals that are working with the charities are provided a letter to confirm that they are under their care, they're in the NRM, or they're in Snowdrop's case on the other side now, and that they provide us a name, address, and just bring the letter in, accompanied by the support worker and their ID. And then we go through a basic bank account application. During that meeting, the staff that undertake this have been selected. We've got champions in each of our branches. We've currently got 41 branches live with this, and we have a minimum of 3 champions in each branch that are specially trained, probably not the right word, but are targeted to be able to give these people the time and the information that they want, and however they want to play the meeting. As Sam said, she was given an expectation of an hour, because that's what we put out there. As it depends, each person's different, and we exceeded expectations because we did it within 20 minutes. But some people can be longer, some can be, it depends what questions they've got. And then at the end of it, they're given their account number straight away. But we also do a bit of a banking session with them, so that they understand we're there to help, but also go through the basics of banking, what a direct debit standing order is, things like that, so that they have an idea of even how to start out with the bank account. We have created now a basic banking guide, which is now available on our website, but also will be given in paper form to the survivors as well, so they can take that away. And I also know that then they'll carry on working with their support workers to help them understand further how to budget and things like that. The great story that Sam talked about there is one that always makes me feel quite teary, because it is the first one that when we sent Dover live, they were the first one to come back with the feedback to say this has happened, and it's the story that always sticks in my mind. But what was so great about it was what we were trying to achieve. We are opening bank accounts, but the relationship that we've established is the key. If we'd have not gone about that in the right way, that individual wouldn't have felt that he could have come back in and asked us any questions. Or, we've had others that call in every week just to say hi, because they can now and they feel confident enough to do it. And I think that's amazing, that they've gone from being in this life to then move to being scared of everything, to then moving on, getting a job and etc. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's oh, sorry, carry on, do.
Right. No, you carry on.
No, it's great to hear how you've taken such a kind of holistic approach so far, and It's clearly having a real impact with the charities you're working with and the survivors you've been able to support. And Catherine, we'd love to hear about a bit about how the Barclays initiative came about, and kind of where you're at with that as well, and how your programme is progressing.
Sure. So when I look back on my notes ahead of this call, I was reflecting on how long this sort of ambition to address this really important issue has been going on. I think it was back in 2017 that we first started working with Stop the Traffic to understand some of the issues and see what we could do in this space, long before sort of the FAST programme and survivor banking became part of our operation. So we've done a range of things in this time. I think the difference between Barclays and HSBC is that it's not wrapped up as sort of a separate type of account or process. It's part of our financial inclusion approach. So whether you're a victim of abuse, whether you're homeless, whatever your circumstances are, we want to welcome the opportunity to chat to customers and to help you get a bank account. That's probably the biggest opportunity, but it's also one of the biggest challenges. It's how do you help frontline staff, large volumes of frontline staff, understand what they should be looking for. You might have very inexperienced or junior members of staff who are the ones meeting potential customers who might not have life experience. I certainly didn't know the scale of this. I remember seeing a keynote speech from Ruth Durnley, the CEO of Stop the Traffic, a few years ago, and I was just blown away by the scale, and it really drove me to want to get involved and do more, hence sort of trying to work with the fin crime teams to see how we can embed this as part of our vulnerable customer approach. So we've done various things, from looking at sort of smaller pilots in hotspot areas of Peterborough and Birmingham and different areas of what we can do to help the teams know what to look for, spotting signs, working with the police in a community-based approach. But then rolling that out more widely so that we know where to signpost colleagues to if they get a customer who might have non-standard documentation, or recognising that not everybody will come in with the utility statement and the passport, because that is the first thing that happens all the time. Somebody comes in, oh, I want to set up a bank account. Great, have you got your ID in this? And how would that make you feel if you're a customer or a potential customer who doesn't have that? So I think it's from that very first moment of somebody walking into the branch, how can you set the tone through empathy and awareness that it's okay, it's not a blanket no. We want to work with you to help you get access to a basic bank account, and whether that's through one of the charities that we partner with, so through Salvation Army or Hope for Justice, then we want to try and help get documentation if you don't have it then and there that can help you access basic banking. But I think more broadly, across the banks, this is something where we're really keen to collaborate in the right way, learn. It's great to hear from HSBC what they're doing, and to see what we can do across the industry to tackle this, because the scale is just astounding, and there's more that all of us can do.
Absolutely. And I guess just on that point, in terms of more the fact that there is so much more that we can all be doing, and obviously we're all working towards. In your opinion, if you saw kind of how the Barclays programme would be progressing over the next 3 years and expanding in the future, what would that look like to you, and what would kind of success look like in that form, in terms of helping to support survivors and ultimately prevent exploitation?
You've always got the two sides of it, haven't you? You've got the how to spot somebody who's at risk right then and there, and that's equally as important to helping somebody get access to banking. So it's also not one size fits all message. There's not one thing that you need to know with when talking about this topic. It's actually, if you've got somebody who's at risk, what do you need to do? And I can imagine for a frontline staff member that could be extremely frightening if you can see somebody in distress, or there's a complex circumstance going on there. So there's that side to kind of cover and raise awareness of red flags and what to spot. But then it's also thinking about the access to banking side, and how can we make that a great customer experience. So I think it sounds really obvious, but it's just about continuing to talk about it, to raise awareness. There's always so many more comms and initiatives landing in the bank from, which is great. Lots of vulnerability is very, very, very broad, but this is really important. So it's how do you make sure it stays top of mind for colleagues in a very competitive environment when there's lots of news landing all the time.
Yeah, that's I can see that the internal comms is obviously a really important factor in the success of these programs. And yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit just about some of the work that you do to kind of make sure that everyone is aware of the programs and how you help to promote those internal comms.
Yeah, sure. The fin crime team have been doing an amazing job to develop relationships with the front line, and similar to HSBC, we've also got champions. There's over 100 champions now across the branch network. And what's incredible is the amount of passion that this topic invokes. You see unprecedented levels of support, considering that you might not see huge volumes of solutions yet for survivors. I hope that we will get to that point. So it's not that everyone's got personal experience of opening a bank account for a survivor, but as soon as you start to talk about it with people, they are driven to want to take action. So we've got champions. They have regular newsletters that go out from the fin crime team and the vulnerability team. They have quarterly conference calls, so checking in what's the latest information, asking questions. We might get guest speakers from some of our charity partners. So it's helping to keep it front of mind, as well as maybe sharing topical things that are going on.
Yeah, and I just turn to some of the other charities now. Lara, as working with Snowdrop and the clients that you support, what do you think how best do you think the financial industry could expand the current financial services provisions for survivors, and what do you think are the key drivers for greater impact in future?
I think one of the major things is that other banks can learn from the examples that have already been set by the two that we just heard about, because the more banks that have that accessibility and that ability and that understanding, both in terms of financial inclusion for helping people to access bank accounts, but I think there's a hand-in-hand approach of the more that people become aware of financial inclusion for survivors who are recovering, you also then have the same effect of bringing more awareness to looking out for signs and indicators that somebody may also be being trafficked, and that the person with them trying to set up a bank account may be exploiting them for that. And I think bringing financial inclusion into the topics of a number of different banks helps to bring that level of awareness, and there is a real need for that, because I think bank accounts are one of the major ways that people do find of exploiting people. And it may be a secondary exploitation. They may be exploiting them for one purpose, and then also using banks to exploit them for financial exploitation in a different way as well. So I think where banks can get involved, there's a both and part of that. I think really understanding, kind of as this podcast is demonstrating, but that by bringing in financial inclusion into the long-term planning for survivors really does also help to reduce re-exploitation, and that's also really important to understand. I think some of the major things for banks to take on, a little bit that we've already heard about, but is those frontline delivery staff really understanding about the person-to-person contact that they have with survivors, and making that environment non-threatening, really understanding. We've had really positive experiences of going to the bank and really having some wonderful people, kind of frontline staff, opening bank accounts. And similarly, we've had experiences where we've set up meetings in advance. We've given information to say this is what we're coming for, and then the person that we met wasn't the same person that we talked to on the call, and were really difficult, refused to slow down when they were speaking to the person, got really frustrated that they didn't really understand, and then got so frustrated they just said, you should just bring a friend with you to translate for you, which obviously is is bad practice. And so I think that as well is one of those training pieces of that's where the both and comes in, of when you're helping somebody with financial inclusion, it's really important to make that space safe for slowing down, explaining what a bank account is, explaining the process, going through it over that period of time, taking a little bit longer with them, but also that importance of actually, if somebody has bought a friend to translate for them, that actually could also be an indicator. You shouldn't be recommending that somebody brings a friend with them. It's really important to understand that that actually could be a sign that somebody is exploiting them. And so we did follow up with that bank, and that's where you see the very different practices from banks that are really making an effort to become aware of the issue and to make those environments friendly for people, and those who don't yet have it on their radar. And so we see a real difference in that. And so I think that's why it's really important for banks to get on board with the idea of financial inclusion, and particularly setting up environments that are trauma informed, that are survivor informed, to really break down some of those barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I wonder, you've kind of summed up very nicely, I guess, some of those kind of key recommendations that you would make for financial institutions when they're kind of considering what's important when they're thinking about how to approach opening similar initiatives for survivors to open bank accounts. I wonder if Avril or Sam, if you had anything to add on this in terms of kind of key recommendations that you would make from a charity perspective to banks in terms of how they can expand this in the in the best way forward. Sam, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to add. I agree with what Lara has said already. I think maybe a couple of things in relation to obviously the fact that not all victims do go into the national referral mechanism. So there are people out there who are just as vulnerable, and maybe more vulnerable than those that are in the NRM, that still need to get access to bank accounts. At the moment, obviously, the way that it works for us is that we would apply for the letter by the Salvation Army, because we obviously have the client with us because they've entered into the NRM and we're a subcontractor providing that support. So obviously that's fine for that cohort, but for those that don't feel ready to enter into the NRM, they're scared of entering the NRM, I think, that's something sort of worth thinking about as well going forward into the future. How do we support those in society that are also vulnerable? I think from my perspective, I think it's helpful as well to build that relationship with the local branches. We support quite a wide area in terms of our outreach support. So I've been trying to kind of make my way round to the different branches as much as I can. So I was invited to the Canterbury HSBC just to give a kind of talk on what we do and how we can help, because I think that's really important for awareness raising, and also just to have that charity input on the support side of things. So it's not just, in relation to how many victims there are, it's actually what we're trying to achieve and what we do on a day-to-day basis with those victims to help them sort of going forward. So I think for me, sort of partnership working is really important, and we're trying to build on that in Dover, in Canterbury, and also I think it's the Stratford branch as well, because we have an office there. So we're slowly sort of getting out there to try and speak to all the branches and build those relationships.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point that you mentioned there, in terms of, it's not about necessarily the number of people accessing bank accounts, but it's about those longer term outcomes, and how those, how through partnerships you can keep track of those outcomes and look to monitor them over a longer term. Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, sorry, I just forgot to mention, I think the other thing as well, which I think would be really good, obviously we have the initial sort of setup appointment, and the offer is there to obviously come back in as and when that survivor needs to. And the gentleman that I alluded to before, he actually did do that, and in the end, he came to us and told us that he had a problem, and we said, do you want us to go down there with you and sort it out? And he said, oh no, I've done it myself. So at that point we were kind of excluded from that, but we were really happy about it because it meant that he felt confident to do that. But I think perhaps on top of that, which would be good as well, would be to have sort of further sort of follow-up sessions actually for those clients to attend, sort of around budgeting, once they find a job, what the bank can do to assist that, and sort of more around the direct debits when it's actually relevant, because I think at that initial point when they first set it up, it's quite overwhelming sometimes, and they don't sort of fully understand everything that bank account can do. So I think some more sort of emphasis on the follow-up side of things as well would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so I mean, Lou, just coming back to you and the work that you're doing at HSBC, is that something that you are looking to monitor and kind of keep track of in terms of the longer term outcomes? And if so, how do you work to do that as a team?
So yeah, some of the things that we've been doing in respect of that is some areas have been doing follow-up sessions. We've actually, although we've got the basic banking guide now, there's in the offing, and I don't know, COVID's kind of put a lot of things on hold, unfortunately. But there's been a design, or there is in plan a financial education pack that we are sharing with the branches to be able to offer time to go out and help the charities that they're supporting. Obviously that may be in a new world, in a new way, depending how things move forward in the current climate. But yes, we do have tools, and we are in talks, and we did last October for Anti-Slavery Day, got all the branches involved, got the whole staff across the whole of HSBC joining in, understanding around what we can do and things like the red flags bits and stuff. And what happened was some of the branches that aren't actually part of our champion remit have been starting to help with education and things around banking. So yeah, I like the idea that we could personalise it more for the clients that have been in and opened accounts, rather than just going in to the charities and offering that financial education piece. So yeah, I'll take that away, Sam, and no doubt we can pick up on that separately anyway. But yeah, I think it's a great point. But yeah, moving forward, they're the types of things that we've been talking about with our champions and what else we can do, but also to expand further. It was Sam's request that we expanded into Stratford, and the Salvation Army have now been talking about Oxford and some other places. So we work on a needs base, so we'll have the branches in the areas that need it then to be able to operate. So I'm in regular contact with these guys on where we need to be next, and that'll be our next point then.
Yeah, and how do you look at measuring the impact of those, of the program on a wider scale and a branch by branch basis?
So we currently monitor for how many people they've had through, how many appointments, how many accounts. If I'm honest, we don't have a target or anything set in that. As far as we're concerned, if we help one customer, we've helped a client, we've helped somebody turn their life around. And that's why there's no emphasis on the time when they come in. We just think about, if we say approximately an hour, then we're giving, the caseworkers, etc., a chance to understand. So at the moment, we've opened just over 500 accounts now so far. I check in with the champions every couple of weeks to make sure that if there's any feedback, or the charities, again, we have good relationships with the charities, they feedback on that as well. Anything that we find that is not working, be that through the charity contacts, or be it through feedback through the branches, we look to change that and move things along. With regard to things like internal assessments, we are constantly monitoring to make sure that people have not been caught back up in human trafficking. We've got internal processes for that, and that again is changed depending upon what's happening in the world. So we've just recently reviewed it again to make sure that what we're doing is the most up to date. And again, when things change that way, we'll change it for frontline to flag in again what they need to be looking out for. And again, the same with what Catherine was saying. Our teams are a lot more aware now that we have these people who are opening accounts, are now also aware of people that are coming in that might not look like everything's 100% kosher, and now then start asking questions and doing things about it.
Yeah.
Does that help? Do you need anything else? Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you, Lou. And yeah, I mean, I guess I was wondering again from a charity perspective, what what are the kind of the key outcomes that you think, Avril, what are the kind of key outcomes and impacts that these survivor inclusion programs can have on a survivor, and how do you kind of help to support a survivor through that process and through a longer term program for recovery?
So one of the things that we champion at Kalayaan is for survivors to try and keep themselves safe. So one of the things that we will assist them to do is to a number of our survivors, they receive their statements through the post to Kalayaan. So we will encourage them to come and check their posts and review their bank statements and make sure that everything is correct. So similarly with having a contract of employment, some people have never had their work formalised before, so it's a kind of case of reviewing their documents, making sure they're understanding what they might have signed up to with a contract of employment, making sure that their wages are being deposited when they knowing when they can expect their wages, whether it be weekly or monthly, and helping them to budget for that as well. So that's one of the things that we do. That is, I mean, it's kind of, as I said earlier, Kalayaan doesn't really provide a kind of fixed term for support. So people may come, we support survivors, and then it might be that they feel confident enough, but then maybe later down the line they come across an issue, and they're always welcome to come back into contact with us. But I think just to kind of repeat the comment that I think Sam made earlier, that having those strong partnerships with banks mean that when issues do arise, or if we've got any concerns, I think it goes both ways. I know that HSBC, they monitor for safeguarding purposes. And also we can flag from our side if we've got concerns as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and in your perspective, what does a really successful financial inclusion program for a bank look like?
I guess again, kind of just echoing some of the kind of earlier comments, the whole process can be really life-changing for survivors. Walking into a bank and not being turned away. I have been, prior to HSBC developing their scheme, I have spent whole days trying to open accounts for people who, for circumstances beyond their control, don't have the requisite documents. And despite Kalayaan advocating on behalf of the survivor, still being turned away, and the impact of that can be hugely damaging, and in some cases can result in people thinking that they have no other option and can be at risk of being re-exploited. So I guess just the best practice that's been demonstrated by HSBC so far in kind of creating an environment in which survivors can walk into a branch and be given a safe space in which to ask questions about how an account might work. For some of our clients, this is the first time they've ever had a bank account. They've never had one in their home country. So the whole idea of having money kind of no longer working cash in hand and having money deposited into an account, knowing how chip and PIN operates, all of those sorts of things that we take for granted that people just know how to operate. Given that time to survivors in branch is really life-changing. And then, as Sam said, I've also been there when people have received their post and have received their card, and then they have to sign on the signature strip on the back. All of that stuff, it's I don't think the financial sector should underestimate the impact of all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I mean, it's clear. Obviously, we're all aware of the huge impact which can be had through these initiatives, and it's been amazing to hear from you, Avril, and Sam and Lara, just some sort of practical examples of people who have gone through this and have had the benefited from the impact of this. And I think the kind of question is now is for the financial industry, who are the key players in the organisations that we see and in the sector that can really lead this. And Catherine, I wondered if perhaps you could give us a bit of an insight into your opinions on this and who you think those key players are that can really help to drive this forwards.
Well, I think as this podcast has shown, collaboration is key. Collaboration internally with your, controls partners, fraud and fin crime in terms of your policies. It's about engaging training teams. It's engaging frontline leadership. So there's a whole need to bring the whole organisation on board with this. We've been really keen on getting senior leaders, whether they're outside of the front line or across the bank, involved in this, and a really strong, passionate internal senior advocate can be helpful, just to have a top down and bottom up approach. I mean, that goes without saying for lots of initiatives, but we've definitely done that with this and it's worked. And we see really strong levels of engagement on this topic and a keenness to support. Hence why we got involved with the UN's Finance Against Slavery and Trafficking initiative last November and hosted their launch event with the UN in New York. And I think externally as well, again, through the charities, there's so many different organisations. So it's not just like there's a one size fits all externally either. How can you diversify and probably tap in to different organisations? It looks like, regionally, that's important too. So I think that's something that, I'll be taking away to talk to the team about. Whilst we've got some really strong relationships with some core charities, is there more we could be doing to see what else? And again, not just with the charities, but law enforcement, government, having the opportunity to debate this at a industry level so that we can achieve some consistency, so that charities aren't getting mixed messages, consumers and customers, potential customers aren't getting mixed messages, because it's confusing already. But if Bank A does one thing, Bank B does another, it's not helpful. So I think that's what FAST programme was trying to deliver as well. It's industry-wide consistency, and I think that's something we should probably do more to promote through the charities. That yes, come to Barclays, we're here to support you. It's not a named account. Just come and talk to us. We'd welcome the chance to work with you based on your needs. But also, how do we promote this to customers? There might be people who are not coming through the formal channels and are just trying to do some research. How can we show them that we're open for business and welcome them as well if you're not coming through the charity route?
Absolutely, and I think that's so important. I know you mentioned earlier about how you see this very much as part of a whole vulnerability approach and a wider accessibility program. And I think that clearly building sort of resilient communities and helping to reduce wider vulnerabilities around financial inclusion for members of the community that aren't necessarily victims of trafficking or slavery, but may well be vulnerable to exploitation. It's so important to have that full approach. And
the important thing is as well, vulnerabilities don't exist in isolation. If you're vulnerable in one way, doesn't mean to say you're not vulnerable in another. Often there's a huge degree of overlap with these things as well, which actually just brings me on to a final point I wanted to make around building financial health, resilience and capability longer term. So getting the bank account is very much the first step, but actually you'd want to see somebody developing really strong financial health and resilience. How do they grow in their relationship with you to enable and achieve greater independence? And I think that the basic bank account is hopefully just the start.
Absolutely, and I'm conscious that we're kind of coming close to an end, but just would love to hear on that point how you have been working across your whole vulnerability program to help vulnerable individuals to build that financial health and what you've been doing there.
Yeah, so I mean, very much you've got to look at this holistically. you might have circumstances that happen overnight, you know, hospitalisation, car accident, things that can change your life, or you might come in and through this sort of track where it's very much a longer term thing where you're a survivor and you're coming out of a life stage and need support. So you've got to have a multi sort of pronged approach to this, and access to finances, making payments, transactions is one thing, but then financial health and ensuring that somebody can budget, can live their life, can you know, not just be in a negative cycle of financial vulnerability, but actually trying to be more financially resilient, and is what we're trying to aim for, I would say. So looking at it through a longer term view, and obviously with, you know, the likes of COVID, that's given us another way to look at some of these challenges. You know, income shocks and things like that, you know, it's something that's really important, that you can support customers so that they can be more resilient in the longer term.
Yeah, yes. And yeah, I mean, just lastly on that point, Lou, I wondered if you had anything to add in terms of, you know, for yourself, who have been the key drivers in the organisation, you know, to really help move these programmes forward, and who do you think, you know, who do we think that we need to kind of ignite, so to speak, to help within other organisations?
To be fair, I think most of mine, I was just making notes as Catherine was talking there. I think we've probably got the same. It's the same areas. You've got to engage compliance and risk. You've got to know what our risk appetite there is, and what we're willing to do, be able to do, you know, in some cases. But I think I do think that the key in this is senior leadership. There was no doubt that when Vanessa started the journey in 2018, the pushback was with compliance, risk, financial crime. They were the things we needed to look to mitigate. Once we'd all sat down the table, did the proposal, got the CEO and the leadership team on board, it's the right thing to do. And you know, once people can see past that stage, you're absolutely winning if you've got your senior leadership team on board. And I think, again, the same for HSBC, as I'm sure these ladies will agree, is that the passion and the enthusiasm from the staff of just wanting to help it always astounds me, but it never stops amazing me on how much they just want to make a difference. And I think that makes it so much easier to do this job when you've already got people that just say, what am I doing? How can I help? Bring it on. And I would say that they are the key players across any organisation to help move this forward.
Amazing. Yeah, and clearly, again, that comes back to that case around awareness, and just, you know, making sure that everyone in the organisation is aware and understands the importance of these programmes. Well, yeah, well, I mean, yeah, thank you again so much, everyone, for joining us. I think the final thing that we wanted to do was just to go around and see what everyone had, if they had one message or call to action for the financial industry to help build stronger, more financially healthy and resilient communities, and to support survivors. What would it be, and what would your recommendations be? So I think if we start with Sam, and then we can go through and just, yeah, again, if you have anything else that you want to add before we kind of wrap things up, then it'd be great to hear.
Of course, I think I've said most of the recommendations that I'd want to say already. I think for me, my job is always to bring it back to the survivors and the support that they need, and sort of looking at the outcomes that we're sort of seeing. So if it's okay, I have a quote from, I think it is that client, actually, the first client, just to kind of bring it home from the support provider perspective, anyway, from Migrant Help. So he actually said to us, I went to the appointment with Sam. We met another lady who asked why I wanted to open the account. I said, so I can have my wages put in when I started working. I found it really good. The lady at the bank completed some things on the computer, and before I knew it, it was all done. The bank account has already benefited me. I'm able to put my wages into the account and go to any shop and pay for things on my card if I don't have cash. I'm really glad I have an account now. So for me, it's just kind of reminding of the positive stories that we already have, from obviously starting our relationships with HSBC and starting to make relationships with Barclays too. And I think it's just to emphasise to continue to work with providers, with the charities, to seeing how best we think that those clients can be supported, because obviously we don't know everything about the finance world. Our expertise is in support, with those clients. So it's about working together.
Thanks, Sam. Lara, if you'd like to follow.
Yeah, really similar. Just to say to always keep the survivor at the centre of every development and every idea that is created. I think within Snowdrop we're really keen on trauma-informed practice. So just making sure that within training for those frontline staff is an element of trauma-informed training to allow people to engage with survivors who are coming in and potentially are afraid or worried about what's going to happen, and knowing how to deal with that. And has been mentioned by a number on the call so far, just to say have that long-term view as well. Setting up the bank account is incredible and empowering, and a massive first step, but then looking at the individual needs of that person and working out how that financial inclusion will help long term in the management of money, and just that knowledge around safe practices. So not being retargeted, how to know if somebody is trustworthy. When you give over money, don't give over money. People have talked about setting up direct debits. So those kind of things where people just eventually feel far more in control of their finances. And the long-term goal is that they don't need support anymore, that they totally live independently and are the risk of re-exploitation is so small, because they have that new level of independence and empowerment that's come from that kind of joint working and support that's been done. So those would be my takeaways.
Thank you, Lara. Before we pass on to Avril, I know Sam, you've got a little something you wanted to add.
Yeah, it was just to add, in terms of the clients that this is regarding, just a reminder really that it's also British nationals. We're seeing a huge increase in the number of British nationals that we're supporting due to criminal exploitation now, who also don't always have bank accounts. They're extremely vulnerable adults that we've been assisting, and there's been lots of issues around debt as well with regards to British nationals. So it's just a reminder that with regards to trafficking and modern slavery in the branches, it's not just in relation to those who are migrants, it's also British nationals here as well.
Absolutely. And thank you for flagging that. Avril, if you have anything to add.
I think if I mean, you mentioned, Lara, about building stronger, resilient communities. So I think one of the great things about HSBC's scheme is that they've kind of adapted to and responded to the fact that survivors as a vulnerable group will have struggled for a very long time to be able to access financial services. Whilst I know this podcast is talking about survivors of slavery, there are other communities out there that are vulnerable. As Catherine mentioned, you might not have one single vulnerability. There may be overlapping ones. And as everyone knows on this call, anyone can become a victim of trafficking through their circumstances. So I think my kind of, if I can only have one ask, it would have to be quite a broad one, to kind of call on the financial sector to be able to be flexible and pragmatic when they respond to people who come into branch and might not be able to meet the requirements through perhaps no kind of fault of their own, just being alert to that.
Thank you, Avril. And finally, just Catherine, having made the first sort of steps and started working on these programs, what would you say to other financial institutions that are looking to follow your lead?
Just talk about it, keep talking about it, raising awareness in many different ways. start sharing stories. Hearing from survivors is so powerful, and bringing that to life, what it can mean and how to spot the signs, the different ways that this plays out. It's illuminating, and it is also evolving. It's not one sort of thing. We do see changes in the way it plays out, so it's really important to keep looking at what the current trends are, and just keep talking about it and keep raising awareness.
Thank you so much. And finally, Lou, if you want to round us up with your call to action to other financial institutions.
Again, everything everybody said, but I think what I would feel is that it's probably easy for me to say one or two banks are doing it, so let's have everyone follow suit. It seems an easy line. It's not necessarily that easy to do. Appreciating things like banks' risk appetites and their policies, procedures, and although ourselves and Barclays have got through that, as Catherine says, you need to keep talking, you need to explain to people things that are happening, and that's where things then move forward. If we could do that and people can get through those barriers, it would give us a greater confidence. The public would get a greater confidence of the financial sector, helping us all then to help the survivors move forward.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. Thank you all so much. And I think we've covered a lot of really important ground. And obviously there is many more discussions and conversations to be had. And we're really excited to see where your work goes, and how much of an impact that you've created already. And it'll be great to keep in touch with you all as the programs progress. And yeah, we look forward to speaking again soon. But yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the latest Themis podcast. We hope you found it interesting and informative. If you would like to find out more about Themis, get in touch with us via our website, www.crime.financial. You can also subscribe for future news and interviews.